Welcome to Charlotte Conversations. I'm Pastor Barrett Berry. Today we have a very enriching, informative conversation that we all need to have. Churches need to have this conversation all over the world. We're joined today by Physician Associate Leslie Ware on the topic of, can we talk about sex? Can we talk about sex? Now, clean your minds out. It's not that type of conversation. We're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what we need to know as a community to be healthy. Because right now, our sexual health is challenged here in America. And those who are suffering the most are Black and brown people who are suffering the most for some of the illnesses and the viruses and the whatever else that we could avoid with proper education and then action afterwards. So, Leslie Ware, who are you?
That's an interesting question. I'm a lot of things, but I'm going to start this time by just saying I'm a mother of 2 daughters and a granddaughter, and I am a native of Omaha, Nebraska. I thought I'd just start somewhere different. Yeah, but I'm a physician associate, and I am also a health educator. I have about 35 years of combined experience helping people to achieve their optimal health and well-being.
Very good, very good. And so, in your line of work, why did you think this was a conversation that we need to have today?
Well, so I've been practicing in primary care for all of those years, and what I've noticed is that there's just not enough conversation about sexual health. Mm-hmm. Me included. When I was a teenager, I started my menstrual cycle, and I just remember my mother saying, "Hey, you need to consider birth control because anything can happen." And that was pretty much the conversation that I was given. I didn't have much more information than that. Didn't get much through the school. And I know that people from teenagehood all the way to adulthood are just not having enough conversations and appreciating that we are sexual beings. We all got here the same way. But for some reason, being free to talk about your sexuality or to express your sexuality is something that is just unacceptable in our society. And I think that because there are such scary trends that are happening in our community and in the country, that we have to be more free to discuss what's going on in terms of our sexual health and those outcomes of behaviors that are a little bit more high risk.
So, I used to teach as a professor of healthcare policy. And I did domestic and foreign healthcare policy. So this is something that I taught for many years in the classroom, college, about the data and statistics that impact us as a people. For instance, in Houston right now, I think they've had an increase of syphilis, some 123% or so over the last few years. Yeah. Come to find out, syphilis generally is passed from man to man. And so that indicates a whole spectrum of other issues that are out there, but it's impacting our community as a whole. Yeah. Black women suffer at a higher rate, new cases of HIV, than any other demographic. Yeah. It's not even close.
For sure.
60% of the new cases of HIV are with Black women. They'll make up 50% of females in the country. Yes. So what's going on with the Black community?
But I think, again, not enough conversations. The incidence of HIV in African Americans is highest in men who have sex with men. And because that is a culture, the LGBTQ community is, they've been rejected in many ways from the greater society, and then within their own community are not free to express themselves sexually. They have, I think, adapted.
Black women? Why is it Black women head on?
Right. A lot of the focus is on men who have sex with men, but not realizing that there are many men who have sex with men who are also having sex with women. So there's a lot of what we call concurrent sex in our community, where you're having sex with more than just one person, and you're not being open about that sexual pattern that you're following. Mm. Yeah, and then there's a lot of unprotected sex. So, of course, I am a firm believer that the safest sex is no sex at all, but that's not really our reality. We have evolved as a society to express ourselves in ways that We're trying to cover up traumas. We have psycho-emotional issues that we're carrying out in our sexual behaviors and patterns. The down low didn't stop after the movie. I mean, it's still a thing.
The down low is still a thing.
Yeah.
And it's growing rapidly in our community. So I don't even know PrEP. What is PrEP the new? What is PrEP?
PrEP is a therapeutic approach for preventing the spread of HIV from person to person. It's actually a medication that you take. They're one of 3 different antivirals that prevent the transmission, 99%, not 100% of transmission. So it's also a access to care sort of strategy. Mm-hmm. So it's important that people that are involved in PrEP, like myself in my practice, I have a sexual health program that I initiated in July in partnership with Marula Health, another healthcare practitioner that I'm partnering with. Mm-hmm. But you're to go into the community and to do screenings, create awareness around sexual health and sexually transmitted infections, and then to provide access to treatment and wraparound services if you find someone that is positive for HIV.
And, I think we as a church haven't spent much time discussing or talking about HIV and watching it spread. I know when I grew up in the church, my cousin was a guy, got someone pregnant. At first, he didn't have to come and stand before the church and say he did anything wrong. He got somebody pregnant without marriage. But the woman had to go up before the church and say that she made an error and, she sinned, whatever she had to say before the church. And ultimately, they went and talked to my cousin and said he had to. But that was a big deal back then. They even have that type of discussion about pregnancy without marriage.
Yeah.
Today, what is the conversation that we need to have with the people in the church, besides what we're saying now? Is there anything specific that we're not covering?
Well, I think that it goes beyond morality, and people need to understand that we're all sexual beings. That's a part of our nature. And at some point, even your teenager, the average age for beginning to explore sexual experiences is 17. And so for most people, your teen is going to probably have sex before they even leave your house. So if you're not able to, as a teenager, have a conversation with your parent, then you're going to go out and explore your sexuality. And especially if you are choosing an alternative lifestyle or your nature is an alternative lifestyle where you have attraction to the same sex, then it makes it that much more uncomfortable to explore these things. But when you think about it, our parents, our grandparents were having children when they were teenagers.
Right.
There was a greater sense of community around that parenting experience, and they got married younger. So, the ball was rolling at a much earlier age, but it was in the context of a proper family sort of structure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were married.
Yes.
Having kids.
Yes, they were married and having kids at an early age, and they were supported by their community.
Right.
But I think that it's important that we don't so much lean on the scriptures and forget that we are human beings that have free will, free choices, and that at the same time we're wonderfully made, and our bodies are our temple. And to create those messages and sort of blend the messages that come from the pastor, from the pulpit, that people are looking for you to give them advice in all areas of their life. So I don't know why we ignore the sexual part of our lives.
Well, I still believe abstinence is best. I still believe that you should wait till marriage before you at least have a baby. I'm still trying to learn. I had a conversation with some young people this past week in preparation for this, trying to figure this out, why they think it's okay to have a baby before marriage. And the responses that I'm getting, don't you know that you're going to have this child is going to be you're together with this person you have this baby with for at least 18 to forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
18 years through forever.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't see it as they think that marriage is something that's challenging. But then all the other things come along with, I don't know, but I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to learn how we think in this generation.
Yeah.
And I'm catching up.
Mm-hmm.
It's education for me, but I still think we somehow miss it to a certain extent. And one way we miss it also is now they have these things called the next day pill, something like that.
Yes.
And they're making videos about how this is the methodology today is to have unprotected interaction and then go get a pill the day after. Like that is the new way. Yes, it is. But can you speak to that? Is there any harm in that as well? Is it?
Yeah.
How many times can you do that? And what?
Yeah. So there is a morning after or a Plan B option for people who are involved in a sexual encounter and they may be at risk for getting pregnant and having an unwanted pregnancy. So it's a progestin-only pill that a woman can go and take within 72 hours of sex and then not actually become pregnant. But so there are all these options that are available, but I think we need to back it up to empowering people with the information that they need to make proper decisions about their sexual health.
Because they're still open to STIs.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think what I'm trying to lead to is they're missing the point is you're still open up to these STIs. And now today they increase within our community is you can lose a lot with these STIs.
Yeah. So
now,
what I've noticed,
for instance, gonorrhea.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, was one that was common. But now I think you were telling me that they have forms of gonorrhea, strains of gonorrhea today that
resistant to penicillin.
Right.
Yeah, and other antibiotics that had typically been used to treat gonorrhea. Now they're becoming resistant. So the treatment options are out there, but again, I think we just need to really start to talk to people about being comfortable with their own sexuality, with their sexual identity, addressing micro traumas. There are a lot of people that carry out their sexual behaviors, their sexual life, covering up psycho-emotional issues. And so I think it's important for me when as a practitioner, I'm so blessed to have a practice where I can spend more time with my patients, getting to know them and taking that deeper dive so that they feel comfortable coming to talk to me about how they're feeling and what they're experiencing in their sexual lives. And in some of the practices that in one of the practices that I've worked in, I work with a lot of men who have sex with men, transgendered individuals, and there's really a lot of trauma out there. And I think that mental health should be addressed just as well.
Yeah, we just had a mental health session last week. I do believe that we need a combination of mental health and awareness, but also people need to get Jesus. And I think there's a lack of awareness that Jesus is real, or the resolution that we all have for everything really is Christ. But there may be some things that have to get there to Christ, but Christ is where we should start. And then I think mental health awareness, for my birthday, I start going back to therapy. My insurance, pastors, we get four free sessions of therapy, mental health therapy. So I've done 2 so far, and I went for my birthday, and I loved it because I hear everybody else's problems, but I never get to tell anybody my problems. Yeah. So I'm sure that woman got all her earful for that whole hour. I mean, she got to a point she was like, "Man, that sounds really interesting." I mean, she was I think she's trying to write a book off of me. But I say it to say, we talk about the issues around sexual identity is the fact that we really need to spend more time with discussing mental health.
Yeah. And
to get to that point, to make these decisions, it takes a lot. And I'm not we're not an affirming church, but we are a church that doesn't judge. And I think that more churches should be in a place that whatever your ailment is, whatever your issue is, whatever your struggle is, feel free to bring it into this church. I do believe in miraculous ways of the Lord still, so I still believe in that. But what's your thoughts today? How do we, with all this different conversation that's taking place about identity in the medical field as a clinician, What do you see coming out of it? What do you see on a day-to-day basis coming out of it? The gender identity and the different lifestyles.
Yeah, yeah.
On the clinical side, what do you see?
I see a lot of suffering in silence, and that starts with the first rejection when you decide to come out and express your identity sexually and as an individual, because it really is kind of happening at the same time. You're saying this is who I am, and this is who I am, and what I choose sexually, and who I choose sexually. And so the first rejection comes from the person's family, and many times, and then it comes from their church. And so a lot of times they don't have a way or a forum for discussing how they feel.
How's that impact their physical health?
Well, your mental health is very much a part of your physical health, and if you're not living and achieving an optimal health sexually, then that also affects your mental health. And if you are anxious and depressed, then a lot of times you will express that in your sexual health and your sexuality. So it's all sort of intertwined. And I've had many conversations with LGBTQ individuals, men who have sex with men, and trans patients. And a lot of times they talk about now having rejection within their own circle, within their own community. So they'll seek out sexual experiences through apps, through dating apps, Grindr and Jacked, and they won't even have a sorry. Yes, yes, you're right. They'll seek out relationships and sexual experiences through these apps with people they don't know, and then they will meet up with them, not having a conversation about their status, their sexual
and that's what I'm getting to. So that sounds like it's a cycle that reverts back to increased levels of disease.
Yeah, it's really dysfunctional.
Passing around, and then they bring it to why Black women are experiencing 60% of the new cases of HIV.
Yes.
So we have a lot to just deal with as a community as a whole about dealing with being able to have these open conversations.
Conversations, for sure.
These open conversations are actually saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any of that was taking place.
Yeah.
And I didn't even heard of those sites before until you. I'm just catching on to people having OnlyFans pages, and I'm just catching on to that. Matter of fact, I had somebody who I respect a great deal tell me about their OnlyFans page, and I'm still trying to catch on to how we've gotten to a place where that becomes acceptable in multiple circles where it wasn't acceptable before.
Yeah, it's normalized because people will try and cluster around those people that affirm their identity, that affirm their opinions and their behaviors. And these folks have found community in a way that they don't realize is dysfunctional. Because part of having a healthy sexual experience is to know the person that you're going to have relations with. And to not be afraid to say, hey, you know what, I want to use a condom because that's in my best interest and your best interest. But if you don't feel comfortable that that person is going to accept you and that they are going to reject you, then you'll kind of go with the program. And that leads to, a greater incidence of STIs. And then, two, there's sort of a double-edged sword with PrEP because it 99% of the time, not 100% fail-safe, but it does prevent the transmission of HIV, but it doesn't prevent the transmission of other STIs. And if you have an STI, you contract gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas, syphilis, that makes you actually more prone to developing HIV or contracting HIV. And then, yes, it's really kind of scary that we've come to accept that, okay, as long as I take this pill, then I'm free to not wear a condom because all I have to do is go get a shot or take a couple of antibiotic pills to get rid of these other infections.
And that's what's leading us to the spiraling down of the Black community having a higher propensity of getting these ailments versus the other community.
Yeah.
And also, it's no socioeconomic protector either. It hits all classes, all economic classes, from the poor to the wealthy, every education across the board. So is testing something we should look into?
Absolutely. I can't really tell you what your choices should be. I think that there are healthier choices and there's some not so healthy choices. My job is to protect you from the consequence of a riskier choice. And so I think that you should get tested periodically, like every 6 months at least. You should require that with your annual exam that you're asking for STI testing. And if you choose to have sex with more than one partner, I would have testing before and after each new partner, and periodically thereafter. If you're in a relationship where you're not sure about the monogamy of that relationship and you think that you might have someone who is having extramarital relations, then you should consider having testing on a regular basis as well. And that's for gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas, syphilis, hepatitis C, and HIV, of course.
And I don't think it's a bad idea for married couples to get tested either.
That's right.
I want to empower married people to go get tested.
Right.
I want you to say it's okay. It's not about splitting up the relationship. This is not an argument that you need to have. I think at this point in time that from coming out of the coronavirus pandemic, the virus is still here. But coming out of that, I think it's time for us to be more precautionary in our approach to protecting ourselves. I went and got shingles. We helped vaccinate over 700 people through our ministry from the coronavirus, COVID-19, and I had questions about continuing, but I'm like, I've gone so far, I might as well get all of them. I'm all caught up on all my boosters shots, and then my friend said he saw something with shingles, and I went and got my shingles vaccination as well, and I think it's good for us to continue in this process now of going and getting tested. I think for the sake of the black community and the brown community, I think it's important for all of us to go get tested.
Right, and it's not just for yourself; it's for other people too. Just like with with the other vaccinations, you're thinking about not just yourself, but the community as a whole.
Right, and not to say you're being promiscuous; we're just being precautionary.
For sure.
So I think that's key. Are there any STIs you can get from not having any sexual interaction?
No.
So from the toilet seat, people say you can get something from the toilet seats.
No. You could get herpes, but that would be, if you say sat on a toilet seat, you had a crack in your skin, and there was the virus. It lives on a surface for a short period of time because it thrives in cells. But you could conceivably get it from sitting on a toilet seat with an open sore or something of that nature. But vast majority of the time, it's sexually transmitted, hence STI.
I'm asking for all the saints who don't think they can have it.
Right.
They can get it because they're so saintly. How about in the air?
No.
How about, I won't say spit, but that.
Yeah, saliva. You can get it from any bodily secretions. And that raises kind of an interesting point. There has also been an increased rate of throat cancer due to the human papillomavirus, if you can imagine.
Say that
The human papillomavirus
is that?
The virus that causes genital warts. It's actually the most common STI. It causes genital warts, but it also can cause oral cancers.
Oh, I get it.
And that goes back to the conversation, how important it is to have a conversation. You have to be prepared socially, and we have to prepare. That starts with our children, to prepare them to have agency over their bodies and to be able to express themselves. And we call them inoculation strategies when I was going through public health school, is that we want to prepare our young people with the conversations that they'll need to have when they get to that situation where a young man or a young woman is pressing for sex. You need to be armed with the no in advance and how you're going to say that.
What's some data we could throw it? What's some data out there that we can use? The numbers, statistics.
Yeah. Well, for Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, we're number 13 out of 100 in terms of high sexual transmitted infection rates.
We're number 13 in the
We're number
country?
13. So there's a lot going on out here in Mecklenburg County and in Charlotte and the surrounding community.
Is that in the nation or North Carolina?
That's in North Carolina.
There's about how many? There's like 200 counties in North Carolina, something like that.
I think there's 100.
100?
Yeah.
So we're 13th out of 100.
We're 13 out of 100.
We nasty.
Well,
What else?
73% of new cases of HIV are amongst African American men, typically men who have sex with men. 29% of new cases of HIV are in women of color. And most people who should be on PrEP are not on PrEP, unfortunately. And it's something that we really should consider. It's the least that you can do. If you're going to have multiple partners, if you're going to have unprotected sex, then the least you can do is to get tested regularly, get access to care, treatment, and consider PrEP as one of those things that you do.
All right. Any questions out there? Anybody have a question? Raise your hand if you have a question. Matter of fact, let me have the mic a second. Let me go find a question from somebody out here in the audience. Where did you go to school, Leslie?
University of Nebraska, Med Center, University of Nebraska, Lincoln.
All right. You are from Omaha.
I am.
Anybody have a question? Yes. Here I come. Here I come. Here I come. Here I come. Excuse me, Doc.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Bernita. I have a question. Is the name or the word PrEP acronyms for other words?
Yes, it stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Pre-exposure prophylaxis.
Okay.
Yes, before you are exposed to a sexual encounter that could lead to the transmission of HIV from you to your partner, that you have prophylaxis with the medication that is one of 3 different antivirals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good question. Anybody else with a question? Willie, I know you have a question. So, before we depart here, what's the number one thing that we as a community can do to change the condition of the outcomes that we're seeing now in our community around sexual health?
We need to start talking about it. Parents need to figure out how to talk to their children. Children need to feel comfortable talking to their parents about their sexual identity, about their sexual health, about their nature, their feelings, about encounters that they may have with their peers. Healthcare providers need to be more sensitive to sexual health matters during the course of an office visit, not poo-pooing it off and avoiding the conversation. And patients need to feel comfortable that they can access someone that they trust, that they can share the most intimate part of their being. And so we as a medical community need to be more open to all comers when it comes to sexual health and sexual conversations. And people in relationship need to feel more comfortable getting to know the people that they're having, that they're considering having sex with, or having a relationship with. And you should seek not just the sex, but a healthy, loving, and nurturing relationship in the midst of all of it.
You said the average age is about 17 when people start having sex?
Yes.
Well, all my friends had sex before 17. And I read somewhere that 12 is like where it really starts.
Mm-hmm. Well,
12.
Yeah. 24% of cases of HIV are amongst 13 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah, so I think this conversation is, people try to frown from it like high school, but 12 is middle school.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was a substitute teacher, we would have a church was going to be in the school, so I substitute taught for a while. And there was a stage, and we're talking about 7th graders behind the stage on a regular basis. We would catch them doing what they do.
My question is, when having a conversation with your child about sex, what should you say?
Well, it depends on how old they are. You want to meet them at their level, and you want to also be open with them. I think that first to let them know that no matter what they have to say, that you are not going to be mad at them, they're not going to be punished, and that you're really their sort of parent partner in helping them navigate through what really is a challenging time, right? Because kids are not only just trying to figure themselves out, they entering to a teenagehood have different changing emotions. Now all of a sudden the boys and the girls are attractive, and they don't know what to do with all that. And trust me, they're not going to go get their answers. They're going to go get their answers elsewhere if you don't provide them that secure, safe place to have the conversation. So you can talk to them about their anatomy. That's important. I think you should talk to them about having autonomy over their sexual choices. Being comfortable within their own skin is fundamental. And from that place, I think flows more proper decisions and more confidence in saying, this is who I am as a person. This is what I choose about my body, and I have agency over my body. It is mine, and I have the right to say no if I want to, and I feel confident that if that no means that you're going to say, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, or I don't want to be your friend anymore, then so be it. We have to give them that confidence.
Yes. So you have a flyer here. Do you offer testing?
Yes, I do. Every second and fourth Monday from 9:30 to 11:30, in partnership with the county and Marula Health, we are offering free STI testing. That includes gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas, and HIV, as well as syphilis. And all you have to do is give us a call, 980-949-6000, and we can schedule you an appointment, or you can just drop in.
And where are you located, and your website?
My website is www.ahawdpc.com, and I'm over on the South Boulevard corridor, 1433 Emerywood Drive, Suite A, over on the south end of Charlotte.
Excellent. Now, again, someone said wrap it up, which would utilize prophylactics, condoms, but abstinence is best. If you're not having unprotected sex, if you're not having sex, you don't have to worry about catching the STI.
For sure.
And I think today, without knowing how people are, and we're in emergency mode here in the Black community as far as catching the different STIs.
Yeah.
See, mainstream news and media is not going to talk about how bad it is in the Black community. They talk about the numbers as the overall community. And those numbers don't appear as bad. But when you break it down to Black folk and the like, you start seeing a disparity between our health versus mainstream health.
That's right.
And we need to be more alarmed that we as Black and brown people are suffering at a greater propensity because we're the ones that go to church the most. So I don't even understand it. But anyway, the church doesn't matter because
they're not talking about it.
They're not talking about it. And we need to talk about it more. So thank you for allowing us to be bold, brave, and courageous to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us here at Charlotte Conversation. We had a great conversation with physician associate Leslie Ware today, 35 years of experience, and she's been my doctor in the past. And you go check her out at her practice there off South Boulevard and Emerson? Emerywood. South Boulevard and Emerywood, right here in the great city of Charlotte, North Carolina. Always remember this here at the Empowerment Ministries. We love you. We absolutely love you. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. God bless.